Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Aishi Kemetan. My matrix number is 1190811 from KME1. Will present to you about impact of liquidity support, prudential measure, borrower assistance, and monetary policy measure on bank abnormal returns during COVID-19 pandemic. As we know, outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic during 2019 until now really give a huge impact to us and economy. Even if the pandemic crisis ends, the financial will take a long-term recovery from the financial crisis. It can be said that COVID-19 is a big challenge to financial institutions, especially banks. This is because banks are expected to face greater loss than other financial institutions. According to Al-Qaeda 2020, the financial sector banks are expected to play an important role in absorbing the shock by supplying much-needed funding. This point of view was agreed by the action of central banks and governments implemented policy interventions in response to these situations. There are two reasons why need policy intervention. First, to reduce the sharp tightening of financial conditions in the short term. Second, to support the flow of credits to firms, either by direct intervention of credit market, such as government-sponsored credit lines and liability guarantees. Lastly, third, relaxing banks' constraint on the use of capital buffers. What is the effectiveness of policy measures taken during this pandemic? To answer the question, I present to you how the market responds to different policies, which are first, borrower assistance, second, liquidity support, third, prudential measure, and last but not least, monetary policy. Firstly, borrower assistance is a measure that funding the flow of credit to households and firms. For example, in Malaysia is ICNA that helps the household and firms to survive during this pandemic. Borrower assistance shows to have the strongest immediate impact on bank stock prices, both on aggregate and in the cross sections. This is because banks experience large abnormal returns. Next, borrower assistance also give more benefit to larger banks than smaller banks. This is because borrower assistance such as interest rate subsidies and liability guarantees are more likely used by large banks. Last but not least, there is a positive relationship between excess stocks and borrower assistance are exclusive to developed countries. This is because this support did not affect on stock prices due to the less room for fiscal expansion in developing countries. Next, liquidity support. Liquidity support is a measure used by monetary authorities to expand bank short-term funding in those domestic and foreign currency. Liquidity support measures show to be beneficial in terms of lowering the liquidity risk premium. Next, when liquidity support measures were announced, smaller banks and public institutions experienced huge abnormal returns due to greater reduction in uncertainty of this policy to these banks. Last but not least, during the COVID-19 crisis, access to central bank financing and action addressing bank financing constraints seem to have a calming effect on markets, as indicated by bank stock overperformance after policymakers announced liquidity measures. Next, thirdly, prudential measures show a negative abnormal returns in bank stock. This is because prudential policies allow banks to run down some of their buffers. The results suggest that markets are pricing the downside risk from the depletion of capital buffers, as well as the additional expansion of riskier loans loans in the balance sheets of banks. It is possible that in countries with financial vulnerabilities, before the start of the crisis, banks were deemed to be in worse positions after the use of prudential measures. Lastly, monetary policy. The results for monetary policy announcements are more mixed. Although such announcements were not associated with aggregate bank stock price increases, they did seem to reduce the liquidity premium, confirming that policy rate cuts and quantitative easing represented a key tool during the crisis because markets have become familiar with this measure since the global financial crisis of 2008. Well, I can conclude that market respond differently with different policy initiatives on addressing the stress to banks during the COVID-19 pandemic. Hence, central banks and government need to play important roles to monitor the economy and choose the best solutions during the financial crisis as well as the pandemic continues to take a toll on the world's economy. That's all from me. Have a nice day. Stay safe. Bye.